Previously on Tales from Tech Titans.
We used to track at Starbucks the number of cups made per half hour. I will never forget one Boxing Day, which is a very, very busy travel day.
Yep.
We tipped the scales at like 150 cups one half hour. When I first came into this industry, it was very much a straight man's world.
Yeah.
I have spent a lot of my career in fear that I will be judged for my sexuality and not my ability to do the job. As much as things have gotten better for people in different industries, you know, who come from different backgrounds or different minorities, there is areas where things are getting worse. I was there for a short period of time. It was a very hectic job. Very, very hectic, but I learnt so much from it. That was when my career became a cyber career.
So you're now at the Trobe, very different concept.
Very different.
I was going to make a terrible joke and say you finally got to university.
It's a bit like that.
It strikes me as a really interesting customer base, let's say. Just a melting pot of different types of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I find really fascinating about cyber in universities.
I said to Eglantine when I started after the first few weeks, I'm like, some of the incidents I see would probably have sent us into a full crisis mode, but it's kind of part of the course, right? You've got a different value proposition for security within somewhere like a university as opposed for a piece of critical infrastructure like PEXA. It is, open learning and open access. As much as things have gotten better for people in different industries, you know, who come from different backgrounds or different minorities, there is areas where things are getting worse, and holding on to these values is a very important way in every industry to make sure that everyone continues to be heard and feels comfortable and can be themselves. And that's really just all it's about, right? It's about creating a level playing field. It's not taking anything away from anyone else. It's just a level playing field, and a safe one at that. And that's what's been really so important about it for me. And as someone who's kind of been through that and experienced homophobia and all kinds of awful things in the workplace because of my sexuality, I've been so vocal as an advocate for it. In my new job, as soon as I saw the opportunity to be on the LGBTQIA plus advisory group of the DEI Council, I was like, and I'm putting myself down on it because it's important to have that visibility. Because I want anyone coming into cyber or tech to see that, there are leaders who are lesbian, gay, transgender or bisexual or whatever it may be, and being successful and accepted and doing well. And so it's really important to me that we hold on to that.
So if there was something more you would like to see organisations doing, what would it be?
I think what you said before, it's not that I want to see organisations doing more. I think the trajectory we've been on with diversity programs has been fantastic. What I want to see now is the companies that will really double down, like we spoke about before. Right? I'm watching the news very carefully every day around who is chickening out, and who is actually coming out and supporting us when we really need them to. And there are quite a few, and it means the world to everyone, right? And I'm not just talking about gay people. I'm talking about women. I'm talking about people with disability. I'm talking about transgender people, right? Like we just want to be functioning members of society and to serve our communities the same way everyone else does.
Great. Cool. I'm going to move on if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You struck a chord there.
No, like I said, I'm glad because in preparation, I really did want to cover this with you. And I wasn't quite sure. I had some bits in my notes, and I thought I really want to tap into your experience and learn.
Thank you.
One of the greatest things about this podcast is I feel like I learn so much, and that comes from having these conversations and learning from people's experiences. So yes, so thank you. Thank you for being so candid and sharing.
Thank you for giving me the voice to do it. So it's good.
I was going to talk about dimension data, but it kind of feels like it's a insignificance now. But what? So you were 9 years, I think, with Verizon, something like that. Multiple promotions, very successful, and then you left and you went to dimension data. Why?
So I wanted to get out of Canberra.
Yeah.
I had separated from a partner who I'd been with for quite some time. I was single for the first time in my adult life.
Yep.
Canberra all of a sudden felt very small, much like Warilla and Shellharbour and all that felt very small.
Yeah.
And I'd always kind of wanted to try living in Melbourne, and I had nothing holding me back.
Yeah.
So I started applying for jobs relentlessly down here, and I'd almost given up. And then I came back from a holiday, and Data called. I'd applied for a job with them ages ago, but said that, as often happens, roles get held up in approval and all that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, moved very, very quickly. Flew down here, did like 4 interviews within 24 hours because they knew I was coming down and they just wanted to get it done. And then took the job on. I was a SecOps manager for one of their big clients, one of the big financial services clients here was good old Latitude Financial, just down the road from where we are now. So I worked on site with them all the time. And you know what the interesting thing is, I think that was when my career became a cyber career.
Okay, because I was going to ask you when did you feel that you...
because I'd been doing all kinds of interesting stuff: service delivery management, operations management in the network operations center at Verizon. But then all of a sudden, I was working like with this in-house. They were the InfoSec team, as they were called at the time. And even though I was the vendor, I was very much brought in to be a part of the team. And that was when it became cyber. And I was there for a short period of time. It was a very hectic job. Very, very hectic. But I learnt so much from it, worked incredibly long hours, survived some pretty crazy situations. And then we were sort of getting things really, really well. And then that was when PEXA came knocking on the door.
I just got one question actually about that time at Dimension Data. Because you're employed by Dimension Data as essentially a consultant, for want of a better words, or kind of on site with their customer, their client. Yeah. How do you kind of straddle that line between loyalties?
That's a really, really good question. So when you're in a role like that, the title was Security Operations Manager, but I was essentially like an operational SDM, Service Delivery Manager. And so your job is to be an advocate for the customer back into Data, and also to be the best foot forward of Data in the customer sphere, right? So, it was hard because Data was a big machine, and God, I had a great team there, but I was making sure that the customer saw the value in the service every single day, right? And sometimes that meant making a lot of phone calls to make sure processes worked smoothly, and making sure that I wasn't a single point of failure for the customer and all that kind of stuff. And there were times when it was challenging. Like there were times when I was on the phone to people at Data, like going like, "Do this now." Do you know what I mean? Like, do you ever? I've got like 10 people standing at my desk. I need this done. There was that kind of thing, right? But then I would also have to make sure that I was very transparent and representative of Data as a company and the services they offered. I would bring the engineers on site, so like these are the people that actually do the work for you, and make sure that they saw the trends in the service and the value in the service through the governance and the reporting, the good and the bad, and really worked. I was really proud of what we did there because it became like a bit of a partnership, right? I wasn't just the vendor. I became, and my Data team became an extension of their team. It was, and outsourced models didn't work like that very well at the time, right? Like you were the vendor and you were evil. You know what I mean? But we had a true partnership going there,
Okay.
And I really felt like I was part
That sounds
of
like that was more about
family.
you than Dimension Data. You're probably not going to admit that because you're too humble, but
Thank you.
so I'll give you a get out of jail on that statement. You haven't got to go one way, but I do think it's that, and I think a lot of people in tech and a lot of people that come on the podcast work client side, they work in consulting and so forth. And I'm always just curious about that.
Yeah.
Because I always think that if anyone's thinking about their career and they're kind of listening to this and looking for that experience and the learnings from it, it's what does it really mean to be in those roles? Yeah. It's all well and good seeing, the Accentures and the Dimension Datas and the KPMGs, whoever on the resumes, but it runs to a different rhythm and pressure.
Yeah.
When actually you're then somewhere over here where someone's paying the bill for what you do.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a tricky balance. And that's one of those things where you've kind of got to get it, right?
Yeah.
So that mentor I spoke about earlier, so she was from Verizon, and so she did a service delivery manager job into one of their biggest clients. And to this day, I still idolize her. She was so good at what she did, and the fact that she had that confidence in me to do it. And I can remember meeting up with her for a glass of wine after I'd left and moved. I came back to Canberra for a visit, and she was just like, "Listen to you. You've turned into me. You're getting the best for your customer, and you're holding the company, the company you work for to account. Making sure that everyone's getting the best value for the dollar that's being spent." It's a very interesting role, which I think you need to have. There is a very specific emotional intelligence as well as business acumen and technical knowledge that you need to be able to kind of blend to do that.
Definitely. Look, and I think it's good. I think if you can, for people to do that part of their career, because I think you learn maybe the business side of technology, or the commercial implications, let's say, of what you're doing, rather than just being in an organization. Your job is to keep the lights on, the network working, and the bad guys out. When you're in that situation, it's a bit like you go back to your Starbucks and having to do a kind of financial plan and a QBR. Or you understand the mechanics of selling cups of coffee and the importance to the business.
I think what it probably helped a lot with as well was about being decisive. And I think that's what maybe some of the people, the more non-technical leaders in tech bring, is the ability to take all the different risks and all the different gotchas that the tech people bring to the table, all the reasons why it won't work, and kind of look at it and go, right, this is the decision. This is what we're going to do. Because when you're in that position where you are the sole representative of your organization, sitting, and this is when you're in the office 5 days a week, seated right in the belly of the beast, you've got to keep things moving. Right?
That's right.
Like Latitude Financial is a big company that is, making a lot of money with all of its consumer finance products. And especially in the security space, things could not sit still. So you would have stakeholders from different vendors, the customer, the company you worked for, all telling you different things, and you would have to blend all of that.
It's intense.
And so someone once said to me, what you do well is you're very good at taking a technical problem and producing a business outcome. I think that's one of those superpowers that non-tech leaders can sometimes bring into tech roles.
Well, and a huge compliment, I would say.
That was said to me years ago, and I've never forgotten it.
There you go. So you sort of briefly did get to it, but you then left and joined PEXA, which you're not supposed to have favourite clients in world of recruitment, I suppose, but they definitely would be up there for me. We love working with PEXA, and Eglantine and Lisa and other people we've had on the podcast, and just a great organisation. What drew you though specifically to PEXA?
PEXA was a great time in my life. So I worked there for 6 years. And that job came along really unexpectedly. I was not looking. I think we'd gotten things to a really good place between Didata and Latitude. And then I can remember I was trying on a suit one day. I was having a suit fitted for I think it was for a friend's wedding. And I got a call. I don't normally answer calls from numbers I don't know. I let it go through the voicemail. But for some reason on that day I did. And it was someone who was doing recruiting for PEXA at the time. and they had this role. It was security services manager, and I was like, I don't really know what this is, but the company sounds really interesting, and it sounded really exciting because the then head of security was starting a new team. PEXA had a bit of media attention because of a cyber adjacent issue a few years earlier, and looked like they were really kind of stepping things up a little bit. And so I remember starting that job. I always like to tell the story of my first day there, right? Because this role was brand new. I got there and they were still building the team. I was told I was going to have 5 direct reports. I had 1 direct report there on my first day. It was like the 7th of January, like really early in the year. And this other direct report, it was his first day too. And him and I, over the 6 years I worked there, we always loved to tell this story. He's still there. How we went down and had coffee in the basement at Collins Square there. And I just looked at him and I said, do you have any idea what the hell we're supposed to be doing here? He's like, no, because I have no idea what we're doing. And I was like, no, that was the most refreshing thing to sit down with someone who was my direct report and share that we were completely out of our league, which we weren't. And then, over the years there, the stuff that we did there, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the team that we built and the capability we built at PEXA it's the feather in the cap for my career to date. They are an amazing group, and they're still there. There was 4 or 5 of us when I got there in 2019. There was nearly 25 of us across Australia and the UK when I left. And there was succession planning. I had someone ready to take over my role. And I attribute a lot of that to some of the incredible leadership I had with people like Eglantine and people, and Lisa, who you mentioned before. Lisa was always she was on the customer side of things, but she was always such an advocate for the work we were doing and so complimentary. It really was a great experience. It's
also, I'd imagine, given the nature of what the business is in terms of you're dealing with a lot of cash, moving places, conveyancing and property and so forth, it's pretty intense if that goes wrong from a cybersecurity perspective.
Yeah, and to that end, we got a lot of support, right? A lot of support from the top leadership, the board, the CEO, all the way down. We were given a lot of free rein to do what we needed to do. So the person who hired me moved on. Again, it's the same story. So moved on, and then after the former head of security moved on, I was approached by his boss and said, "Oh, would you mind acting in the role for a little bit?" Then eventually got put into the role, and then the new CEO started and said, "No, we're actually going to change this from head of to CISO because it's the title you deserve to have, and it's a much more recognizable title." And again, all that happened in the first 18 months.
Amazing.
A bit of a trend.
That's exactly right. So why did you leave after 6 years?
I felt like I had achieved what I needed to achieve there. So, like I said, we grew an incredible team, and they are, I love them to death. They're such an amazing group of people. And I could have continued to stay. I loved working with Eglantine. I loved my team, but I'd achieved what I needed to achieve. I'd learnt all I felt I could learn. There was a new chapter happening there with their international expansion, and I started bringing on direct reports in the UK, and they're a great team too. But I thought, maybe I might just be applying the same lens. Right? Maybe this is the chance to step back and let the rest of them kind of flourish and let sort of the next generation kind of take over. And I think I was just ready for a new challenge myself as well, as kind of happens.
I think 6 years in an organisation, particularly if it's growing and it went through an IPO and all sorts in that time, I think you were there, is a good tenure, but probably the right tenure, right? As you say, you run the risk of becoming a bit stale and a bit BAU and night watchman, whatever you want to kind of call it.
But there was a rare situation too where I knew I could leave and everything would just continue. So Graham, who was sort of my deputy, who took on the CISO role, so deserving of it. Graham, on 2 occasions when I buggered off to Europe for 5-6 weeks at a time, using up all that COVID leave, acted in the role. And you know what? I came back and I'm like, oh, he's done a better job than me. And I remember leaving, and I remember sort of saying to Eglantine, I'm like, you are being gifted a succession plan in your cybersecurity team here. Obviously, Graham's got to go through the process, but
and that's rare.
Yeah,
it's refreshing,
incredibly rare.
And I can't remember the stats on this now; they're not top of my head because it's been a few years since I looked at them. But it's amazing. It's disproportionate the number of companies that go external for those kind of roles in leadership. Doesn't matter security per se, but and the kind of psychological theory is you kind of know where the skeletons are with your current people. Whereas something you don't is shiny and new.
Yep.
So it's kind of more enticing to bring in shiny and new often than back the things you've already got, which I think is a missed opportunity. But it sounds like you passionately believed in building that succession plan.
Absolutely.
And investing and giving opportunity, which again is really refreshing.
What's even more exciting as the former leader there is I know that it was a big recruitment process. There was a big desire to look externally. There was I heard from friends that the CISO role there was the talk of the town for a while. And despite, I know that they probably met with some amazing external candidates, he still got the job. And that's also great to hear as well, because it shouldn't just be, well, let's just give the person the go, and if they fall over, we'll worry about that later. It's good to run a proper process, and that person also knows then they're backed and can be themselves in that role. They're not, have I got this by proxy and am I on borrowed time? Because that's also, I think, a problem in succession planning. And you know what, he 100% did that himself, but as a person who was his leader and who provided him with tons of feedback and opportunities and all that kind of stuff, there is a sense of personal accomplishment to sit back and go, I felt like I had some part in it, right? And it's totally him because he is an incredible individual, but to know that I maybe played some role in that is a personal mark of success for me.
Yeah, hugely. And I think as we go through our careers, that becomes a different motivation or a different measure of success.
Definitely.
Seeing the people that have been part of your team go on to do better things than you, I think is hugely rewarding.
Absolutely.
So you're now at the Trobe, very different concept.
Very different.
I was going to make a terrible joke and say you finally got to university.
It's a bit like that.
I kind of wondered whether there was a kind of like a mental tick box of, I had one guest, actually no Moham, he's in cyber, Dan Hagman. He's over in Perth. He runs a consulting business. And he'd applied to, I think, Cambridge University as a kid and didn't get the grades and didn't get in. He now works for them as a mentor, which I think he quite likes the irony.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm sure that's not the motivation. So what kind of challenges and what are you seeing in that role that's exciting you?
So, funnily enough, I'd started a university course a few years ago for the first time. And it's a bit of a sad story. I've suddenly lost my sister. Very suddenly. I was traveling overseas and got a call one morning to say that she'd passed very unexpectedly. And I went into a bit of a weird funk around that, as one would. We were very close. And then I all of a sudden existential kind of crisis started to happen, all that kind of thing. And I picked up something that I'd always loved doing since I was young, and that was writing, creative writing. And so my fiance said to me, why don't you do a course or something because you're loving it so much? So I just completed one of the micro certifications, the undergraduates that they do through Curtin University, through Open Universities online in creative writing.
Yeah, wow.
And when I was looking for roles, a lot of the universities were looking for CISOs. A couple of them were around about the same time. And that was kind of what drew it to me is I was at university for the first time ever and I was actually loving it. I really enjoyed it. Nothing to do with cyber, but you'd be surprised how much creative writing and storytelling can help you in selling a cybersecurity strategy. So anyway, that was the inspiration, and I even used that story in my recruitment for the Trobe. And one of the things I said when I joined there is, why a university? And I said, well, because I've always done roles in security where I can feel a strong attachment to the higher purpose of what it is we're protecting. At PEXA, 90% of all of Australia's property transactions, right? We were responsible for making sure, like safeguarding people's life savings and making sure that they were able to buy and sell their homes in a secure way. Which was that was a lot of the mission at PEXA, of a lot of what we were able to get behind. But at La Trobe in higher education, I mean, what more noble a cause than to be a part of making sure that people can give and receive an education, and that important research that advances humankind can be done in a way that is safe and trusted and secure. And that's really been what's kind of tying me to the mission to take on a role in higher ed.
But I'd imagine, and I have strangely the benefit of having your predecessor on this podcast as well. Of course. And I'm pretty sure I asked him the same question. It strikes me as a really interesting customer base, let's say, that you've got, as in predominantly students.
And academics.
Probably
more so academics.
Okay, I was just thinking more about the students that come onto the platforms, that use the university systems. There's thousands of them, right? And they're tens of thousands, but also very transient in nature. They're not here forever. They're not here. They're not employed. So there's no kind of consequence from an employment perspective of doing something wrong from a cybersecurity point of view. Yet they're using the systems probably off a multitude of devices, probably in different countries. And then you've got the academics. Like, it's a really just a melting pot of different types of people. And I think that's what I find really fascinating about cyber in universities.
I said to Eglantine when I started after the first few weeks, I'm like, some of the incidents I see would probably have sent us into a full crisis mode, but it's kind of par for the course, right? You've got a different value proposition for security within somewhere like a university as opposed for a piece of critical infrastructure like PEXA. And that is that it is, open learning and open access, which I think a lot of people in my position kind of go, that's terrifying. I'm like, no, it actually makes it more exciting and more interesting, because you get to play a part in that. I can't, in a university, for a university to run, you've got to be way more practical and pragmatic about making risk-based decisions around what controls you will implement and how far you will go with them. And the level of consultation you have to do to make sure that you're meeting the needs of your stakeholders. So you have to just what I've learned already is just to sort of flip the script a little bit and go, all right, because it is it needs to be more open, there needs to be a little bit less friction, the accessibility of academia and all that kind of stuff. I put a lot more focus on mine on just, hardening the things I can, but also on my visibility. So my visibility of what's going on my network and my ability to detect issues and respond to them effectively, right? Reduce the old, likelihood impact kind of discussion. So, and bringing the university along on that discussion as well on how we manage risk and how we prioritize things based on risk and the decisions that we want to make around that. And that's kind of really exciting. That's really challenging as well for me too. And that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to do it, is because, like we said at PEXA, I was given quite a broad remit. Lock it down. You know what I mean? Like, make sure people can log in, but lock it down. The university is different, and so I'm loving that challenge to learn how to be comfortable with the risks I have to be comfortable with, and focus on what I can do, and figure out how I manage and control the things that I can't.
I'd also imagine across that student cohort, there must be some incredibly talented people that potentially could get opportunities in cybersecurity.
I'm hoping there is. I've met a few already, and I've also had the pleasure of even meeting some of the academics and the lecturers in the computer sciences school. In fact, one of them I was having a chat and just pulled me in front of her class and was like, "Hey everyone, this is our new CISO."
Yeah,
I'm like, "Hey everyone." But yeah, that's definitely on my roadmap. My strategy is to partner with the academic side of the university and look at how we can create pathways up for them.
I was speaking with the CIO from one of the Melbourne-based universities, and he was talking about how he has his tech team actually go into lectures. And attend lectures to see the customer experience, to see the challenges that the kids are having with logging into laptops or accessing presentations or whatever it can be.
I've been invited to do that. In fact, I've been invited to come and speak to the students as well, which, I'm less than 6 months in, so I'm still getting my feet under the desk. But yeah, definitely that is one of the big kind of draw cards or big appeals of the role, I think, is there's that whole element at such a different dimension of the students, and the fact that and La Trobe's got amazing cybersecurity programs, so to be able to get involved in that and be a part of that as things progress, I think is going to be really cool.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking about the imposter syndrome of getting up and running a lecture in the cybersecurity class. With the expectations of you as the CISO. I'm not trying to plant a seed in your head, but I was just thinking.
I think the invite was to come and talk about my career, which would be good. But yes, I think definitely like, these kids are going to take me seriously.
Sort of last kind of career general, type questions. You recently joined the board ASIA. I think I'm getting the acronym.
AISA, Australian Information Security Association.
So how did that come about, and kind of what's your involvement, and what are you doing with them?
So look, AISA, I had a few opportunities to join a couple of different groups within the cybersecurity space. The opportunity, I knew some people involved who told me that there was nominations available, so I put my name forward and was very lucky to be considered. And again, it was about challenging myself and to learn something new. But when I think about AISA, I think about my first ever AISA cyber conference that I went to in 2019, which was when I first became a CISO, and that imposter syndrome was in overdrive. And I remember going to that conference and meeting all these people who were experiencing the same challenges, but then going and sitting in on some of the talks and people sort of going, all right, I'm well established in my career, I've got all these amazing credentials, and this is how I'm solving these problems. And I would look and I go, I'm already doing that.
Yeah,
I'm not a fraud. But then I would get all these other amazing ideas, and I'd meet all these people, and for the first time in my cyber career, I felt like I was part of a community. And that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to play a role in AISA's future, was to really help foster that element of community. It was why I wanted to start the Cyber Voices podcast, to help sort of highlight, similar to what you do here, some of the diverse and unique voices that we have within the industry, and provide more opportunities for the community to connect.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to recruit you to my cause actually, though, which is that I'm trying to get more women CISOs, particularly involved in the podcast. They've all got great stories, but they always seem a bit hesitant about sharing their stories, and don't feel that their story is going to be interesting to people, which I find baffling. But so if you do get any great female CISOs or emerging CISOs, please we'll
share leads.
Share leads. That's right. It was actually interesting when we first started the podcast. We one of our missions was that we wanted to have a kind of diverse blend. And then we got to episodes, and the invites, we dropped the list, and they kind of went out, the invites, and started engaging people. And we got to episode 10, and we had a look, and we realized actually we'd had 2 women, 8 men. And we found that getting men to come on the podcast was significantly easier. It's a generalization, but it was significantly easier. And that's something that I think we're now roughly 50-50, but it's something that we've worked really hard and had to reapproach our tactics in terms of our recruitment strategy for guests, which is getting easier because we've got a bit more, momentum behind us now with what we're doing as well. But a female CISO is still elusive.
And it's unfortunate that it is that way. And you're absolutely right. Like, it was important for me for Cyber Voices to make sure that if I said it was the diverse voices of the cyber industry, that they were in fact the diverse voices of the cyber industry. And you're absolutely right, because men will actually ask to be on the podcast.
Yep.
And to make, I really have to do a lot of proactive engagement to keep that balance.
Yeah.
We had an interesting experience doing the podcast at CyberCon in November last year, where I brought on some other branch members from AISA to help me record the podcast. And I got one of the women from the South Australia branch, one from the New South Wales branch, and I got them in to co-host with me. I remember one of their friends stopping by and she goes, "How refreshing to see a podcast that's not hosted by 3 men."
Yeah.
And walked out. I was like, and I actually took that as a victory. I was like, hooray.
It is. It's a huge. That's right. It's again, it's that learning, right? It's learning, and that's definitely anyway. It's our mission this year.
Amazing.
For sure.
I love that.
We're going to go to the cards now.
Oh.
Only because you look really intimidated by them when you first came.
I'm really not sure what this is about.
But anything could come up on these cards. I promise you, they're not too.
Okay.
They're not too curly. But I'm going to ask you to. You can see I'm not a croupier.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you to pick 3.
Love this, by the way.
And then flip it. Ask the question. The question will be on the card, and then answer it.
Okay. So just any 3.
Any 3 at random.
All right.
Scoop those away so you can't adjust.
So. My favorite sport and why. So I'm a big AFL fan.
Okay.
I support the Essendon Bombers.
Yeah.
However, I was not always a sporting fan. I got into it through my fiance Anthony.
Yeah.
He is ride or die. Loves
Right.
loves the Bombers so much.
Yeah.
And he just loves every single sport you could possibly imagine. So I'm all like tech nerdy sci-fi, he's sport. Yeah. And so when we met, I started going to the games with him as a way to get to know him better.
Yeah.
And I now have a membership and I go to every game of every year. And
amazing.
I never thought I would be a footy person like I am today.
There you go.
Yeah. Next one?
Yeah, do it.
Dog person. Sorry, the question says dog person or cat person.
There you go. You're the first. I think you're the first dog person we've had, and I'm a little bit disappointed because I was seeing a trend that I thought tech people were cat people.
Well, I used to have a cat. I did used to have a cat. Her name was Patsy. However, I mean, look, I loved my cat when I had her, but I currently have a nearly 4-year-old Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. His name is Captain Pike. Named after the captain from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And he is just the best thing ever. And funnily enough, my partner, Anthony, he was never a dog person, raised in like a Greek Cypriot family that seemed to fear animals. And but it's so funny, like he has become the biggest dog person in the world.
Wow.
So whereas I've become a massive footy person when I wasn't before. He's now become a massive dog person when he wasn't before.
Love it.
And the last one, what are you most proud of in your career? I think I already covered that off before when I spoke about the team we built at PEXA.
Yeah.
And how they're still continuing to go from strength to strength. Like, you know, as much as I say it's the people, but I know I built that.
Yeah.
And when I left, I remember the day I told them all I'd resigned, they all suddenly started telling me the stories of how I'd had an impact on them and how much they valued having me as a leader and how I changed some of their careers and all this kind of stuff.
There you go.
That stuff sticks with you.
That sounds like counter-offered by guilt trip.
Yeah.
That's all I heard.
Don't go.
I've got a couple more for you.
Sure.
Do you have any career regrets?
Career regrets? Oof. It's a tough one because, you know, you don't want to really kind of admit them. I think I wish that I believed in myself a little bit sooner. It took me quite a few years, even at Verizon, to advance much more beyond just sort of team leader on the service desk.
Yeah.
I went through periods of like actively avoiding opportunities.
Yeah.
And, even like giving a presentation or something like that, I will say it out loud now because it's so many years ago. I called in sick once to avoid having to do it. Right?
Yeah, wow.
And I went through, and here's what I did to come over that. I actually went on a mental health journey.
Yeah.
Right? Lots of fear and anxiety were holding me back because of imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And a good 6 or so years in, I started speaking to a therapist and doing meditation and taking control of my mental health and learning to acknowledge that. I just, any time is the right time. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, what would I be doing now if I'd gone on that journey sooner?
Yeah, interesting. I think, and it's an interesting thing with regrets. I kind of subscribe to the Daniel Pink idea that we often regret more the things we didn't do than the things we did do.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, is there anything you haven't done in your career that you regret maybe?
Anything I haven't done? Do you know what? Like, I think anything, the answer might have to be no, because I can't think of anything.
How about overseas?
In terms of
living, working.
Do you know what? You just hit the nail on the head. Pre-COVID, before I met Anthony, my partner, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I can remember I was at RSA in 2020, right before the world went totally chaotic. And I was actively looking for roles in Silicon Valley and California. I met an Australian over there who was just like, no, you can totally do it. And I did always want to work and live overseas for a little bit, but have not done it yet.
Yeah. It was interesting. Lucas, who we had on a couple of days ago, he spent some time in London, but his advice for emerging cyber talent is go and work in the US, go and work in London, go and work in a major city, somewhere that's not Australia, for at least a year, because you actually get a 3x probably career growth through that experience, because there's so much more happening there. So that's not to diminish Australia. So it'd also come back, because it will upskill this country's capability. But if you really want to fast track your career and go and be exposed to really big problems on a different scale, unfortunately, right now you probably have to leave to come back. Which was interesting.
Yeah. Plus, I'm getting married to a school teacher, so we're very much like planted where we are at the moment.
Do you know what? That's one of the most transferable skills, school teacher.
That's very, very true.
I ran a education recruitment business for a while in the UK, and I reckon most of the supply teachers were Aussies.
Okay, there we go.
So it's a big market.
Yeah.
What would you be doing if you weren't in tech?
I don't know, maybe still making 150 cups of coffee every half hour. I have got a creative side. So I do podcasts that are non-cyber related. I write short stories. I've gotten involved in short film projects, and I sing in a choir.
Yeah, wow.
So I feel like if I wasn't in tech and cyber, I would probably definitely be doing something creative, performing arts related.
Yeah, wow. Nice answer. I like that. We spoke about feedback. It's come up a couple of times. You talk about the way that you shaped your successor at PEXA through feedback. So I'm always interested to ask this question. What's the most significant feedback you've had in your career?
I think I might have already touched on this a little bit, and it was around the fear of the unknown. And whilst I had some, when I started at Verizon, I made some inroads pretty quickly into sort of that team leader role. There was a lot of fear of the unknown that held me back, and I felt like I was dumb, and I wasn't smart enough to be there, and I would never be as smart as some of the people around me. And it wasn't actually a co-worker, it was a therapist who said this to me. And that was, she goes, do you think you're intelligent? I was like, I think I know a lot of intelligent people. I don't think I'm that intelligent myself. And she's like, yep. She goes, why not? She goes, you know a lot about Star Trek, right? Like, I don't know a lot about Star Trek. You're much more intelligent when it comes to Star Trek than I am, right? And I'm like, okay, I guess so. And she gave me that feedback around, well, if you don't know it, you can learn it, right?
Yeah.
That was the start of the journey of where where growth and learning and change really started to be my MO.
Yeah.
Because I was so afraid of what I didn't know that I actively avoided it.
Yeah, wow.
And she gave me that advice. Well, look, just you can always learn. Do you think anyone in those positions above you? Do you think that
yes,
they were they always? Did they just instantly know what they're doing? Right. No, they learnt how to do it.
They were born with that knowledge.
Yeah.
Interesting. Also reflecting on our conversation, I think when you, I can't think exactly how you articulated this, I'm paraphrasing, but you can turn a technical problem into a...
yes, you take a technical problem and drive a business outcome. Yeah.
I think it was interesting because that I think as you were saying that, I could see almost visualizing the person giving you that feedback, which always says to me that was significant to you, as in, things that implant on our memory that deeply, I think, which... was nice. It was nice that person gave you that, and no doubt this kind of helps shape you from here.
Absolutely.
If this is the last kind of worky question, if you had a singular piece of sage advice for the next generation, what would it be?
It would definitely be to not shoehorn yourself into one particular role or experience. There are multiple ways to achieve your goals, and that might be university for you, or it could be something completely different. The traditional ways of gaining a successful career are not always the same for everyone, right? Be open to the fact that you may not know what you want to do until much later in life. Like, I reckon I was not until my early 30s when I moved here, and all of a sudden I was like, no, my career is cybersecurity. Whilst there's definitely a lot of formal ways to gain knowledge and education, there's also a lot of opportunities that you may not be quite aware of where you are learning all the time. So yeah, I hope that's succinct enough.
Yeah, that was great. So my final question for you, I normally ask people for a book recommendation or a podcast recommendation. Maybe you want to think about that, but I'm going to ask you, I'm not sure if you're going to like this question or not.
Here we go.
I feel motivated now to go and watch Star Trek.
Amazing.
Give me an episode.
Oi. So I think Star Trek Deep Space Nine is one of the most amazing shows to go and watch. So I'm going to tell you one that's really, really weird, right? And I'd love it if you get in contact with me if you watch it. Watch an episode called Far Beyond the Stars.
Yeah.
Right? It is not even set on the space station. It's set in like the 1930s or the 1950s or something, and all the characters are playing different characters. But as far as Star Trek's themes of social commentary goes, it's incredible.
Done. I will do it.
All right.
Yeah, that's my commitment. Do you have a book or a podcast other than Cyber Voices?
Quiz? No. Sorry, Cyber Voices. Yes, Cyber Voices. Of course, Cyber Voices. Of course, a book recommendation. What was it called? I just finished reading a series called The Children of Time trilogy by Adrian Sulkowski, I think is his surname. Amazing sci-fi epic, which it's incredible, right? Like these books are set over thousands and thousands of years, and you've got a whole planet of intelligent spiders and then another whole planet of intelligent octopuses, but it's so believable and so captivating. So it's the Children of Time trilogy. The first one is by far the best. But yeah, really, really, I could not put it down.
Done. Thank you. Always after a good read.
Yeah.
So, look, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so candid, so vulnerable, so open. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Ember, that's EMMBR LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.